All right, it's 4 o'clock, so I'll call the meeting to order. Welcome to the 2018-2019 Civic Works Committee, or as engineering likes to call it, the year that Phil talks less. Disclosures of pecuniary interest. Any? Oh, yeah. Sorry, I have to read this out. I apologize, it's my first time. The City of London is committed to making every effort to provide alternate formats and communication supports for council, standing or advisory committee meetings and information upon request. To make a request for any city service, please contact accessibility@london.ca or 519-661-2489 extension 2425. So I'll go back to the pecuniary interest. Any disclosures? There being none. Next matter is the election of the vice chair for the term ending November 30th. Any nominations? Councillor Van Holst.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to nominate Councillor Lehman.
All right. Is he qualified?
That's my opinion, but perhaps
Fair
I
enough.
should ask him.
That's all I need. Are you prepared to serve?
I am, Chair.
Any other nominations? Somebody want to move to close nominations? Councillor Van Holst, seconded. Councillor Pelosa. We'll vote on that. I'll open the vote.
I gotta get up there first.
Do I vote on myself?
Yes.
Thank you.
Closing the vote, motion passed 5-0.
Congratulations, Councillor Lehman, you're vice chair. Move on to the consent items. Does anyone wish to have any of the consent items pulled? There's 2 items. Being none, we'll bring up, somebody prepared to move the consent items. Councillor Pelosa, seconder to move the consent items. Councillor Lewis. Any discussion? There being none, we will call. Oh. Santa? Go ahead, Councillor. Whose microphone is?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Sorry, I did have some, just said some comments about that. Just point out that in the Rapid Transit Implementation Working Group, we had some items for discussion that I brought forward. They're coming again, but that weren't discussed we did not discuss the following items: the bus hailing app that City of Belleville is using, the test of the driverless shuttles performed in the City of Edmonton during the week of October 9th, and of course, the London's Autonomous Vehicle Innovation Network. So those are basically some new new things happening in that field of transportation that were interesting, but there was a very little appetite to hear about them. We may hear about them a little more today, along with this request for an expert to speak to the committee. I was looking through the Transportation Advisory Committee report too, and just wanted to thank Mr. Foster and Kahn for taking on the responsibility of chair and vice chair. Interesting in chatting with them, in 3.2, we're asking them to review the traffic calming practices and procedures for existing neighborhoods document that was put together. And I wondered if that may be, maybe there be another approach in terms of this. We're taking our advisory committees and involving them very late in the process. And so perhaps involving them earlier, especially if they have a great deal of technical knowledge, might be better for us. And I think those were really, that was the comment that I wanted to make about this one. So
So are you prepared to now move the consent items?
I'll move those consent items then, thank you.
Seconder. Councillor Lewis, any further discussion on the consent items? Okay, we'll call the vote.
Closing the vote, motion passed 5-0.
Since it's not yet 5:10, we'll move on to item 4.1, which is the 11th meeting of the Cycling Advisory Group. I'm not aware of any matters arising therefrom. Any questions or comments from the committee? Somebody prepared to move receipt? Councillor Van Holst, seconder. Councillor Lehman, any further discussion? Call the vote.
Closing the vote, motion passed 5-0.
Moving on to item 4.2, that is the seniors bus ticket discount, and we have a letter from Councillor Van Holst, and I've spoken to Councillor Van Holst, and I think the desire is to have this referred, just the senior bus tickets, to the budget process. Is that correct?
Yes, thank you. I'd move that we refer that to that process. Inasmuch as I understand the LTC is also looking at a possibility and the timing might work out there for a solution.
Yeah, just to provide a little background, I know some of the members are new to this. The city used to allocate $500,000 to both a seniors discounted ticket and bus pass. And in 2017, $255,000 of that fund was allocated to the bus ticket. So that's sort of the budget ask we would be looking for if it does move forward in January, just to give people an idea of what the cost of it would be. So if you want to move referral to the budget process, do you also want to add in and also to provide a source of funding? Would that be appropriate since that has to be done?
Okay, we could ask staff to look for that as well.
We can add that to the motion. Do we need to? While we're drafting the motion, any comments? Councillor Lewis?
Thank you, and through you, Mr. Chair, I just want to indicate that I'm very supportive of this proposal. The bus tickets for seniors was something that I heard multiple times on the campaign trail. It's something that people have actually emailed me about as early as this week. Seniors may not see the value of a bus pass. They may not ride the bus that often, but the tickets and the discount on those tickets for them for the occasional trips they need were very valuable.
Anything further? Councillor Van Holst?
Thank you, and it's not surprising, I did receive a few emails of support on this. One of the other points that was made by a resident is that they may simply be not interested in disclosing their income, which is what we're requiring with the bus pass. So they may prefer it for this reason. And another individual who does a wonderful job throughout the city preparing taxes for seniors suggests that there's a 15% Ontario tax rebate on passes and tickets. There was a transportation item that was removed from the taxes, but now it's an Ontario tax rebate. So if they keep those receipts, they can get up to, it works out to 15% on there. And I don't know if the London Transit is able to give them a receipt for their year's expenses. That might be something that could be possible with the new cards that are available.
Thank you. Councillor Pelosa?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would raise the concern with this with the seniors bus discounts. I understand people not wanting to reveal if there's a poverty issue, but we're making one section of the public reveal it while another section based simply on age isn't forced to. And I do believe it's a form of discrimination based on age.
Councillor Lehman.
You raised the issue of funding. I just want to be clear, would this be funded through the LTC or is this funded through general city coffers?
Up until now, just to answer your question, it has been funded. Any of the bus passes that are discounted, whether it's the providing free bus passes to under 12, a discounted income bus pass, or the youth bus pass are all funded by the city. As I am a member of the LTC, I think we were looking at year-to-date or close to the end of the year, that's over $900,000 that the city is directly paying to LTC to subsidize this. So I think one of the things that Councillor Van Holst has raised, which I can also pursue since I'm on the LTC again, is how that's going to be dealt with going forward, particularly in a multi-year budget, and what LTC will be able to do. And I think that's a second area of discussion in terms of budget that can happen. So if there's nothing further, I just want to indicate from the chair that this is also something I've heard a great deal about, certainly representing the Cherry Hill area. So I'm glad this is moving forward and it'll be decided on through the budget process. So is a motion ready?
Yeah.
Who moved it?
Councillor Van Holst moved it. We have a seconder, Councillor Lewis. We're going to call, any further discussion? Call the vote.
Closing the vote, motion passed 5-0.
And we'll just finish off the items for direction. 4.3 autonomous vehicles. This was a request that Councillor Van Holst made to have a presentation on autonomous vehicles to the Rapid Transit Implementation Working Group. I know staff just wanted to address the issue of timing and obtaining an expert and how we move forward in that. So I think Mr. McCrae, would you be speaking to that?
Certainly, thank you. Through the chair. Connected and autonomous vehicles certainly, as they infiltrate our society, will have wide-ranging impacts. Those are difficult to speculate on, but it's something that we are keen to start thinking hard about. It's going to have impacts on a lot more than just transit. It will influence parking demand, planning, urban form, governance around things like transit and ride sharing, things like that. So there was a report routed through this committee in May of this past year that introduced the topic. And out of that report, there was direction provided to staff to create a strategic plan for connected and autonomous vehicles. So that work is beginning now and will proceed through the coming year. So my suggestion to the committee would be that as we get into that and engage with different experts on the topic, that we come and provide a status update, and we bring a subject matter expert at that time to provide the desired talk, if so desired.
Any idea of a time frame when that would be, just so the councillor knows?
The development of the strategy is it will be quite a broad, long-term initiative. It will probably take 18 months total, but you know, a status update probably about 6 months from now would be appropriate to inform the committee on our initial thoughts, initial homework that's been done, and get some feedback at that time. So about a 6 month time frame, if that works.
All right, I'll turn it back over to Councillor Van Holst. It's your matter.
Thank you very much. My concern is, of course, that we get too far down a path of designing our BRT with the future upgrade to rail. So this was the direction from council, is that BRT would be designed for a future upgrade to light rail. And it looks like the autonomous technologies are coming much faster, and that they present a much more likely future. It's interesting that just yesterday in Columbus, Ohio, the residents are able to, every resident is able to ride an autonomous vehicle in a loop now. They've tested that for over the summer, and December 10th was the day where they were just gonna roll that out. That was done by May Mobility. And I've got an interesting quote from the CEO of that company, Edwin Olson, he says, "This isn't about if, but when and how our existing systems will interact with our new and very real autonomous future." So that's really upon us now, and what I want to do is figure out how soon that could be commercialized and have council make a determination on where we should be looking. So should we be still designing our BRT for a future upgrade to rail, or should this be for something different? And if it's going to be impacted by the way he suggests, we probably need to make a decision sooner than later. So I would like us to have someone come and speak and hear about this, perhaps this very person, earlier than that. I think
All
6
right,
months or 18 months.
so you want to proceed with a motion to have an expert attend at the Rapid Transit Implementation Working Group to speak on this issue. I understand that. How long will it take, just to ask staff, to get, my concern, and I don't know if it's yours, that if we want to get the right person, not an advocate, someone who will give us I would think, a even-handed view of the entire picture. Do you have anyone in mind, Councillor, or does anyone here? And there's also a cost issue. Some of these people I can assure you, make their living by coming to committees and speaking. So any thoughts on what kind of time frame that would be, just to do the issue of someone to speak on this issue?
Thank you. You are correct that there are a number of experts out there, and again, it's very speculative with respect to the bus rapid transit project. The light rail is a long-term sort of future-proofing initiative that doesn't really add costs at this time. It's making sure that a future adoption could happen, and really the design that is underway is designing for rubber tire vehicles, which all the talk around connected and autonomous vehicles is considering rubber tire vehicles. So I would suggest that the design that is underway certainly lends itself much more and quite nicely to this technology, and the creation of that space and that dedicated space and right-of-ways can tie nicely, and it's something that'll be considered in this strategy development, that it can fit and provide synergies and benefits as connected and autonomous vehicles interact, with transit and ride sharing.
Okay, I just don't want to get in cross debate on whether we need an expert, and it'll come to the committee for a vote soon. Councillor Lehman, do you want to speak to it? And then I'll ask Councillor Van Holst to make an actual motion that we can debate and vote on.
I share Councillor Van Holst's concern on timing. I just want to read a couple of sentences here from Forbes magazine, September 2018. Transit ridership has declined in 31 and 35 major metropolitan cities in the U.S. in 2017. Factors in the decline include lower fuel costs, increased auto ownership, and ride-sharing services like Lyft and Uber. It goes on to say bus ridership has plunged nationwide since ride-sharing companies like Uber and Lyft appeared. But about 30 cities have found ways to partner with the new companies to reach their transit goals in cheaper and easier ways. Technology is changing transit at an exponential rate. When BRT was first conceived and planning started, Uber and Lyft weren't even on the radar. So in addition to autonomous cars, we now have technology in ride-sharing services. And I think it would be tremendous value for the BRT implementation group to hear from experts on both subjects, because in 6 months from now, the world's going to change again. And I think that's too long to hear from experts in this field.
Okay, can you, let's get a motion on the floor. I know Councillor Lewis wants to talk, but my only concern is if we just bring a motion saying, we would like an expert on this at the next available rapid transit implementation working group. Keep in mind, we have no expert at this point in time. Nobody, I mean, I don't want to get into debate about BRT, but somebody has to identify who they want to come to the committee and when that's going to be, because that's the issue at hand, not a debate about BRT today. So Councillor Van Holst, do you have a motion?
As a matter of fact, I do have a motion. It was written in here that an expert in the field of autonomous vehicles be engaged to speak to the Rapid Transit Implementation Working Group in the first quarter of 2018 about the coming smart transit technologies and the likely timelines for their commercialization. If you're looking for an expert, I suppose I would be fine if we actually went out to May Mobility and asked them, they've made a number of installations. We could ask them how those are going. Maybe invite them to bring a vehicle along with them that we could look at. That might be interesting. I may try and take a trip down to Columbus to try and
Okay, not to interrupt you, but do you want to put that in the motion, or are you going to talk to staff about that, or what, or do you want to leave it to staff?
Well, you know what, I
do you wanna
suppose
do?
I should ask that we can make this invitation. I know that the person we had talking about electric buses was an advocate for that system. Is there a procurement problem if we invited Mr. Olson to London to speak?
Staff, I don't know the person. I don't know what their fees would be. I don't know anything. Do you know anything about that, staff? Mr. McCray?
No, we would have to engage the expert and find out what the costs are and then see how that fits within our procurement policy. So, but we are certainly fine with the recommendation as proposed in the first quarter, and there are a variety of experts, and we can engage at who's most knowledgeable and again can provide the best and balanced input on this topic.
Are you all right with that, Councillor? All right, so this motion, we have a seconder, Councillor Lewis. So we have a motion on the motion, Councillor Lehman?
Is it possible to amend that motion to include expertise in ride-sharing technology?
Absolutely.
Again, I suppose it depends on whether the person we're looking at one person with expertise in both, or whether we're looking at two different people. I don't know what that would end up being. It's very difficult sitting at committee here to come up with a name, interview them, decide whether they're the kind of person you want to come to a committee meeting, whether they're going to charge a lot of money to do that. I mean, that's an issue too. So I just want to keep us on where we need to be here. Councillor, go ahead.
You know, I think the way things are moving today, and from what I'm reading, those things are tied together. I think it wouldn't be that difficult to find experts out there that can speak to both, because I believe the two, autonomous vehicles and ride sharing, will merge into one and the same or use each other's technology.
All right, so is that a friendly amendment, Councillor Van Holst? Is that a friendly amendment?
That would be fine. How is it? Or are we just looking for an expert who can speak to both of those things? Okay.
All right.
And I think it's right. Councilor Lehman's right. As a matter of fact, in my letter.
Do you mind if I recognize you first before you speak?
Oh.
Is that all right?
Sure.
Yeah. All right. So, do you want to speak? Go ahead.
Thank you. All right.
I just don't want to get us sitting here talking back and forth to each other. We're in a meeting.
Okay. I'm sorry. I thought there was a question.
Go ahead.
Thank you very much. So yeah, this is actually the system that I suspected might happen. I believe that one day we'll probably have a curbside system of autonomous shuttles like are available now, functioning in the format of the Uber Pool app, which gives you first and last service, picks up, it'll create routes on the fly and drop people off where they want. That seems to be the most obvious.
So we've got a motion on the floor to bring an expert in those two areas. It's been moved and seconded. Is there further discussion on the motion? Not a discussion about the future of BRT, the future of that'll happen at the committee meeting. Councillor Pelosi.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Are we putting a provision in there based on how much cost we're willing to spend on this, or just that staff is bringing back a possible list of names that we might consider bringing in to speak to us?
Staff, would you like to anything further, or you've got a procurement policy and you've got a budget, so you're the ones that are, we're going to rely on you, I think.
My understanding was that we would shop around, find the best expert, make it work within our procurement policy unless the committee dictates otherwise.
Any further discussion on the motion? All right, we'll call it for a vote.
So we are including the ride sharing, right?
Yeah.
Seem to be having some technical difficulties with the vote, so if I can just acknowledge yay.
Closing the vote, motion passed 5-0.
Thank you very much. Moving back to item 3.1 is a public participation meeting, which is an application by the Corporation of the City of London to rename a portion of 3rd Street from Oxford Street East to Cheapside to Barons Way Drive. So I'll look for a motion to open the public participation meeting. Councillor Pelosi, seconded by Councillor Lehman. Any discussion? There being none, we'll call the vote.
Closing the vote, motion passed 5-0.
All right, so we've opened the public participation meeting. There are 2 members of the public, both of whom have been waiting here since early this morning to speak to this issue. And they're both indicating no, so I'm just going to call once for public input, twice for public input, 3 times for public input. There being none, I look for a motion to close the public participation meeting. Councillor Van Hol, seconded by Councillor Lewis, and we'll call the vote on that.
Closing the vote, motion passed 5-0.
I wonder if someone is prepared to move the staff recommendation. Councillor Lewis, the seconder. Councillor Lehman, any discussion on this issue? There being none, we'll call the vote.
Closing the vote, motion passed 5-0.
And moving on to 5.1, the deferred matters list. Any comments by councillors? Councillor Van Holst?
Thank you, Your Worship. Wow. So, you've just been promoted out of habit. So I was looking at a number of these items. The one, item number 2, file number 76, rapid transit corridor traffic flow. Is that, I'm wondering if that's still necessary? Or is that something that we need to report back, or can be dealt with just in the normal flow of construction?
All right, I'll ask staff. Staff?
This item was brought up previously by one of the members of committee, and it's one that we have intended on addressing in some of the rapid transit report back. But if it's no longer desired, that's also fine.
I just point out it was directed by council, so I don't think we can change the direction of the full council here. You might want to raise it at council when this matter comes before council.
All right, no, that's fine.
Do you have another matter?
Sure. I had a question about number 93 and wondering how that was going, because that seems to be, you know, it's taken over a year, and we're looking at just giving people a week's notice when there's going to be maintenance on a boulevard. Is that, now, I think that's the boulevard just in front of their property?
All right, so I see that's to be reported on in the first quarter of 2019. I'm not sure what you're looking for, since it's going to be before us in the
Okay.
first quarter.
How's that coming?
How's it coming? How's it coming?
It's implemented. The report is anticipated in February to provide committee an update on what's being done in response to that, but it's part of our current practices now.
All right, so it has been implemented. That's great. Thank you.
If it's been implemented, can we remove it from the deferred matters list? Or this was actually the amendment to provide for this, and if you're already doing it, can it not come off the list, or do you want it to stay on so you can do the report?
I'm not looking for an excuse to do a report, but the direction is to modify the policy, so
right.
that does require a report.
All right, I'll leave it. I can't get you off the hook. Councilor Van Holst, something else?
I appreciate that.
No, I'll just thank Councilor Ridley for that and congratulate her for a policy implemented.
Excellent. All right.
I can move the deferred matters list.
You'll move it, seconder. Councilor Lehman, any further discussion? There being none, we'll call the vote. I wasn't going to say anything bad.
Closing the vote, motion passed 5-0.
And I just want to note, we're now past 4:30. Councilor Morgan was bragging earlier that he finished his meeting in 30 minutes, and I have not beaten him, and I blame the committee. So moving on to item 5.2, the Waste Diversion Action Plan. My understanding is Mr. Kogelheide made comments. He just wants this to be received and filed to note that he had made those comments, and he felt they were incorrectly recorded in some manner, so somebody just needs to move, receipt, and file. Councilor Van Holst, seconded by Councilor Pelosa. Any discussion? And we'll open the vote.
Closing the vote, motion passed 5-0.
Moving on to item 5.3, just this has been resubmitted because it was put over for the new council to deal with rather than the old council discussing fluoride. Councilor Van Holst has indicated to me that we have a session on safe water sometime late in January, and it might be good to finish that and have this matter come back on February 5th. Am I right?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. So we have on January 17th available a Safe Drinking Water Act Standards of Care training, and it might be worthwhile for especially the new councilors have an opportunity to take that prior to looking at an issue which would involve that legislation.
So the motion would be, if you want to move it, Councilor Van Holst, to have these delegations return on the 5th day, the meeting on the 5th day of February.
Yes, that's the first Civic Works meeting after the training.
All right, so you'll move that. Someone prepared to second it?
Yeah.
Councilor Pelosa, any discussion? We'll call the vote.
Just through the chair, the health unit would be involved, and we'd like them to be able to attend the meeting. So if that works for them, that time frame, that would be absolutely appropriate. We would like to touch base with them to make sure that that works with the health unit.
Sorry, I missed that. Who?
The health unit would also be in attendance. So if we can ensure that they can also meet that meeting, that would be appreciated.
Staff can contact them and see if they have a they have people, I assume, who could come. I don't think we would change the date necessarily. If they can't make it, they have a large staff, so somebody can make that contact. All right, so any further discussion on this? Okay, we'll call the vote. Councillor Pelosi, you seconded that, didn't you? Yes. All right.
Closing the vote, motion passed 5-0.
All right, and please don't tell Councillor Morgan, we went 5 minutes longer than him. Motion for adjournment. Councillor Van Holst, seconded by Councillor Lehman. Can we vote manually? All in favor? Have a good evening, everyone.